A season full of success and controversy comes to an end for Syracuse, losing to Ohio State 77-70 in the Elite Eight in Boston. SU center Fab Melo was 3 boards shy of a triple-double. That's rebounds, points, and blocks. The Orange sophomore had 10 rejections, a single-game program record. Head coach Jim Boeheim said his team played 40 minutes of good defense, but 35 minutes of horrendous offense. Marone says he'll tell his team that this year was not a step backward, but definitely not a step forward. Along with Coach Autry, you also bring in a top 10 recruiting class. How fast do you think it'll be till they start seeing meaningful minutes?
Well, that's always a good question.
Well, so much for that Midwestern friendliness. Over a month after Notre Dame hands Syracuse its first loss of the season, Cincinnati defeats the Orange in the Big East Tournament semifinals. A big reason for the rivalry atmosphere, the Hobart fan section. Now, while it seems pretty empty right now, just a few hours ago it was so rowdy, the Carrier Dome had to allocate extra security there. SU back in the Salt City after its first top 25 win in over a year. SU took down DePaul in Chicago on Tuesday, and that, Chris, is the first resume win for the Orange this year. SU knows WNIT is likely, but is today a must-win for a Big Dance chance. SU was trailing at halftime, but in the second half, head coach Jim Boeheim said he had to go with the veterans, a group that now includes sophomores C.J. Fair and Dion Waiters. Bright lights, a cast and crew to work with, and an eager audience ready to be entertained. However, SU freshman Michael Carter-Williams was already used to being center stage, well before he first played on the Carrier Dome floor. When Carter-Williams transferred to St. Andrew's School in Rhode Island before his sophomore year of high school, he quickly learned his teammates not only enjoyed hoops, but also theater.
More just something that all the basketball players did. So, I mean, I joined with the rest of them, and it was a good experience. It was fun to see different lifestyles and how other people took things serious as like we took on the court.
It was a trend started by another future member of the Orange, SU alum Demetrius Nichols.
Yeah, D. Nichols, he was actually the first boy to join the choir. Once he joined the choir, it was almost like this approval for the kids because he didn't care if anyone thought it was cool to sing in the choir. He wanted to sing in the choir, so he did. And the next thing I know, I've got all these boys coming up saying, well, I like to sing. I want to be in the choir.
After 2 years of focusing on basketball over theater, Carter-Williams committed to Syracuse. Time previously spent impressing college coaches could now be dedicated to drama. MCW was ready for his first title role, Aladdin.
Well, I doubted myself at first, and then I just kept practicing and practicing and practicing until I got all the lines down, until I got just all the singing parts down, to all the movements down. Being on stage is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, harder than being out here.
Joining a veteran SU squad, Carter-Williams has moved from a starring role to the supporting cast.
If that leading role ever, if he comes up with sick in his throat and he can't speak the next day, then that person got to go in and fill. And God forbid if Scoop, Dion, any of them get hurt, then I got to be ready to step in.
MCW's Syracuse teammates appreciate his background.
He's like Will Smith, you know what I'm saying? He could rap, he could sing a little bit, he thinks he could act. Just an all-around, like, clown. So, you know, it's good. He's a great person to have in the locker room or just have around because you know you'll never, you know you'll always be laughing.
Carter-Williams says he'd like to continue his high school musical-esque balance and get involved in the arts at SU, showcasing his charisma to a whole new world.
There was this moment when he would be on the flying carpet on his knees and he would take his hands and flash them open and flash that smile, that Michael Carter-Williams smile, and say, I can show you the world. And it was magical. It's why I wanted him to do it. He has this little spark.
Eric Silverman, CitrusTV. Jerry McNamara is fondly remembered in Central New York for his time in an SU uniform, including leading Syracuse to its only national championship in 2003. But after graduation, his professional career fizzled. 2009, GMAC quietly rejoined the Orange as a graduate assistant, with plans to someday enter coaching. That process was sped up 3 games into the season, with the leave of absence and later firing of Bernie Fine, opening up a spot for McNamara on the coaching staff.
Well, I think the great thing with Jerry, he's been with us. He's the guard. He's played guard here. He knows the position. He's working with the guards. So I think it's an easy transition.
McNamara's addition and Fine's departure shifts the assistant coaching assignments, Mike Hopkins moves to the bigs, and G-Mac takes over the guards.
We spent a little bit more time working on our skills than we did with Hop. He's a guard. He played, recently, so he kind of easier to talk to.
With the new gig, McNamara has elevated his intensity.
He's been the same. I mean, he's been cursing us out a little bit more now.
I see the fire in him that get us going in practice. Like, if we come out sluggish in practice, he get upset.
While McNamara has just 6 games under his belt as a coach, his playing resume has helped him to earn the respect of the SU guards.
He played here. He won in the SU championship. He knows it's like. I just try to be like a sponge and just soak everything up for me.
And I respect him as a player and a coach, and I'm happy I can work with him every day on a consistent basis.
McNamara says through both his positions on the Orange staff, he's tried to think like a player and act as a coach. Eric Silverman, CitrusTV. The Orange lost its #1 ranking after the loss and began its rebellion to retake the throne 2 days later in the Queen City. Scoop Jardine called 2 games in 3 days no big deal, just like the NBA, although this year it'd be more like 4 games in 3 days for the NBA. 4 days later, Syracuse back in action, and after the Florida win, Jim Boeheim said Marshall would be his squad's toughest test of the season. 30 seconds into the game, Scoop Jardine finds Chris Joseph, who throws it down with 2, an authoritative first bucket of the game. 6 minutes later, Dion Waiters with the steal, and Dunkaroo add the frosting. SU showing how it's leading the nation in steals. Midway through the first, another takeaway. Jardine steals, flips to Waiters, count it. Orange doubling up Marshall 16-8. Later in the first half, Syracuse looking like Bonnie and Clyde. Trish robs the bank and collects the reward, 10-point lead. Second half, Jardine scores on the layup. The Cuse takes a 35-20 advantage on Marshall. A minute later, Chris Joseph, I guess Air Montreal according to Ryan, while he tosses to Fab Mello, the lean, mean slamming machine, SU up 37-24. But Marshall out-rebounded Cuse and staged a comeback. DeAndre Kane's 3 cuts the Cuse lead to 53-44, but SU held on for a 62-56 victory despite many weaknesses noticed by the team. Step by step, the new kids on the block spent the early 90s using catchy melodies to drill that mentality into everyone's head. But that was not exactly an option for D1 women's ice hockey's newest kid on the block, Lindenwood. While the rest of the Lions athletic programs moved from NAIA to D2, the non-existence of D2 hockey meant Lindenwood had a leap to D1 this season. No doubt a tough transition, 1-14 in its first year in the D1 ranks thus far, heading into its matchup with the Orange. After UConn waved goodbye to 2-time National Player of the Year Maya Moore, many, including head coach Gino Auriemma, expected a drop-off this season. However, Auriemma pointed out that surprisingly, his young squad is averaging the same 81 points a game it averaged at this time last year, and its defense is giving up 6 points less. Third-ranked Gino and the girls looking to maintain the excellence, going for its 20th straight win over Syracuse. Following Fitzpatrick's press conference, lawyers for Bernie Fine commended the district attorney for challenging Zach Tomaselli's claims he was molested by Fine and said they hope federal authorities will soon come to the same conclusion regarding Tomaselli's lack of credibility. An image can be a time machine of the mind, taking you back to a meaningful moment with an instantaneous rush. For Syracuse, that image is a lace Niagara sweater, seen in both its first ever postseason win and the first CHA tournament ever hosted at Tennessee. 2 establishing moments in the life of a young program, seeing the purple sweaters once again. In its first game at the LA Coliseum since the Roaring 20s, Syracuse falls to USC 38-17. The Orange defense torched for 5 touchdowns by Trojans quarterback Matt Barkley. SU head coach Doug Marrone says unlike last year's West Coast loss to Washington, the problem wasn't blown coverage, but instead defensive positioning. SU cornerback Kevin Scott says all the team can do is watch film and adjust for next week's opponent Toledo. Reporting from Los Angeles, Eric Silverman, CitrusTV.